Hello from the dung heap, everybody. These are my friends. A lot of them.
Friends.
There he is. Hi, sweetie.
Hello. Good morning, everybody.
And we're live. Hello. SPTV. Hello. Hi, everybody. Hello. Great to see you all. So today I'm really excited to have our friend Mark Torrey back, and he had some things on his mind and maybe his heart and all the things that he has to talk about. I want to hear it. I want to hear it all. He's one of the smartest guys I know. He's working on his thesis for his master's. He's about to get go into a doctorate program in the fall, and I want to hear about all that. But even importantly, whatever is on his mind, he reached out to me and mentioned something about gatekeeping and his experience and the gatekeeping that he sees going on with people's stories, maybe his. I'm going to ask him all the things, and I want to hear his input. So without further ado, here is our good friend, Mark Torrey. Hey, Mark.
Hello.
So glad you're here.
How's everybody?
Hi, we're good.
Thanks,
How are
Marilyn.
you?
Good. Yeah, thanks for having me on again.
Yeah,
This
it's been
is
a
an
while.
interesting
Like,
topic.
glad to see you here.
Yeah, kind of
So-
close to my heart a little bit. So
Good. So
It's
what's
all
been
good.
going on? What's cracking here? You're in Hungary still.
Yeah, of course. With me, just finishing up on certain things and just got some Peter Anderson's in here. Just wanted to say hi to Peter. Mark Possel, one of my Mark Possels is here.
Oh,
Number 4.
Number 4.
But
Hey, Peter Anderson. Welcome.
But yeah, anyway, long story short, I just am finishing up on some things, and I still have some things to do, but everything seems to be moving forward on my end, and it was a little bit of a busy early spring, especially into April, and then since then I've been just doing some studying and whatnot. But in relation to that, I've been following. I watch Aaron's channel. I watch your channel. I watch only a few Scientology channels now, just because there's a variety. I am subscribed to a lot, but there are, quite a variety of creators, which I think is actually fantastic now.
Yeah.
I just sort of wanted to start with my sort of experience, because, I've been in this space for a very long time, almost 2 decades, and
You're saying 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before with George, last month on the 14th of May, that was the 20-year anniversary of me discovering Scientology on Hollywood Boulevard. And so that was on the 14th of May, 2005. So 20 years ago. I was 22 back then. Very idealistic and very gullible type of person, how you are. Most people are when they're young, of course. Wrong place, wrong time. I got swept up. But then on the 18th of May of 2008, I officially sort of left. I sort of made that statement in my own head, like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to leave. And so, it's been a long time. And I do have some experience of trying to get my story out in 2008, 9, and even until just recently. So I hope, that's relevant to what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was 2008. Yeah. So we're looking at, 17 years or so. It's funny is just a little fun fact, my cult anniversary, leaving the cult was 18 years ago. It was, I think 18 years ago. Yeah. May 9th is my as my anniversary
Oh,
of leaving the
cool.
cult. I got into the cult, as I know it, Door of Hope, on, well, I count it pretty much the turn of the new year of 90 to 91, 1990. We're talking. And so it was New Year's Eve. Yep. In 1991, January.
Wow.
So yeah, it's been many, many years, 35 years.
I was
Yeah. So
just
a
a little
lot of
boy, and
deprogramming.
yeah, and in '91 I was 8 years old. So what would I've been in, like, third grade,
So old.
I think, second, third, fourth grade, somewhere in there, since still
That's
in
okay. I do that to Duncan all
elementary
the
school.
time. I'm like, I was 8, I was 7 years old when that happened. When he graduated
Yeah.
from high school, I think I was in kindergarten.
Oh gosh. That's
Yeah.
cool.
So you left in 2008, and you had, obviously, you had an experience, you had a lot of things that had happened. You were in the midst of probably deprogramming from the cult, but you were wanting to get your story out. What was that like? What did that look like?
Well, initially, I will say, at least for the first few months, until September of 2008. So that's June, July, August, September. So that's maybe, let's say, 3.5 months. I was pretty, trying to decompress. And a lot of it had to do with emotional stuff. Like, I had a lot of survivor's guilt. I was getting
Mm,
flashbacks, mood swings. It was really odd. Like, I just felt guilty that I left. I
mm,
knew that I left. I knew I wasn't going to go back, but of course, you always have that guilty conscience, and especially because I was on staff. So I did feel that I had let people down and so forth, which is really a really intense feeling that I'd never had before. So through the first few months, I was just going online and watching videos, especially from Tori Christman, and the Elisa McPherson Trust. And then the good thing was, at least back then, um, I started in September of 2008. I started to write my story, and then I published it in posts on. I don't know if it's around anymore, but it's called the Ex-Scientology message board,
mm.
so ESMB, and it was just this message board that somebody owned, and people were sharing their stories. So that was good. That was really, really nice. I really liked that, obviously. So in that case, there wasn't any gatekeeping in that sense. But I will say, um, in early 2009, I had moved to Los Angeles, and I started community college. I stayed there for 2.5 years, and I had never really met any ex-Scientologists before. So, as well as critics. So I got to
Mhm.
meet a lot of people who are in our space, which many people know, like Graham Barry, Mark and Claire Headley, Jason Begay. There was a gentleman named Michael Pattinson. He was an OT8. He passed away a few years back. My friend Gary Scarf, who passed away in 2017. So I was able to at least meet quite a few, like, ex members, and especially ex Sea Org members, within that experience. And the first time that I ever really spoke out was just we were protesting the Hollywood centers. So I remember we were protesting on Hollywood Boulevard. They have, of course, the L. Ron Hubbard Life Exhibition. That's where I discovered Scientology.
Yeah.
And then a
Now let me
few
just ask you
blocks.
real quick. Was this around the anonymous movement?
Yeah,
Or
exactly. It was
okay.
probably just about a year after,
Okay.
because I
Mhm.
was actually still on staff when the anonymous thing happened in Berlin. And then by the
Oh,
time I went to San Francisco, which was in the spring of 2008,
yeah.
between like February and March, then they were still continuing to protest. So this was about a year after. So
Gotcha.
there were still protests, and the people would come out and so forth. Was fine. But we were protesting at the PAC base, which is in Los Feliz, in Los Angeles area. And I did get at least to tell part of my story to Mark Bunger, and it's like the very first interview I ever did. It's back in February I believe it was February of 2009. I'm not sure. My birthday's in February, so I'm not sure if I was yet 26. I was probably
Oh.
25. Anyway,
Mhm.
but after that point, it became a lot more difficult because I tried to reach out to Mark Bunker again to talk about more things. Um, Obviously, there was Tony Ortega, who who was very, very much gatekeeping a lot of people's stories. I know Aaron has talked about this, which I agree.
Mhm.
Whether it's a conscious decision or not, I don't know.
Wait, no. What
Um,
when you say that Tony Ortega was gatekeeping the stories, like
yeah.
what do you mean? Like, give me some examples of what made you come to that
Well,
conclusion.
so in my opinion, um, and maybe my opinion is a little bit more controversial. If you look at a
Hey, you
lot of
come
the
to the right
stories,
channel.
yeah.
They
Well,
don't
if
call
you
me
look
the
at a lot of
controversial
this,
crochet lady for nothing.
of course, but if you look at and again, it's something where I have to say my opinion, but obviously some people might like the content, and so I don't want to dance around too much. Again, if you like it, you like it. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's
But what
not
I
black and
don't,
white. I mean, I
yeah,
like some of his content as well. Yeah, but it doesn't
yeah.
mean that it's all.
But
Yeah,
if you
great.
look at a lot of it, it's focused on ex-members that have spent a lot of money in Scientology. I remember a few years ago, there was a gentleman in the Boston org, I think it was, who was only in Scientology for a year, but he spent like $1 million. Well, he's going to print that story. High-ranking Sea Org members, people like Paul Haggis, celebrities. Tony Ortega was in the Going Clear documentary, which I love that documentary. But it
Mhm.
seemed to me the focus was on money, celebrity, fame, and someone like me. I emailed him a lot.
Mhm.
I emailed him a lot of stuff, and uh, a lot of it was ignored. And then I'd email again. And in fact, when I used to read his blog, I do remember one day that he had posted something about the Church of Scientology in Stuttgart. And I was really angry because I had provided him with a lot of information on Stuttgart.
Mhm.
And, I was offended that he didn't quote me or anything. But in the end, the only time you can see me on the Underground Bunker is for a very small quote on the Stuttgart org. Nothing about my experience in Berlin, nothing about
Right.
the stuff that I talked to him about, illegal working, the long
Right.
hours, like nothing. Nothing was ever printed or ever done about any of those things. And I spent a very long time emailing him and giving him information. And sometimes there was an acknowledgement, and many times there wasn't. So, the reason why he printed what I had said was, um, and I think I might have mentioned this before. I know I mentioned this to our late great friend Doug Scott Kramer, but before Berlin got the ideal org, it was supposed to be in Stuttgart, but then David Miscavige basically said no, and we're going to put it in Berlin because Berlin is the capital, and it was this whole thing. It was just a controversy and a very incompetent decision making.
Mhm.
So I remember that because there were a lot of people from Stuttgart. And I sort of gave some secondhand accounts, and he printed like me in a quote. But it was like, but that had nothing to do with my story. Like,
Right.
I had printed my story. I had told things to Mark Bunker, but at the same time, Tony and Mark, well, after I would email them, and maybe I emailed them too many times and they got annoyed, I don't know, did refer to my story as a very typical story, that there wasn't much substance about it and it was very typical. And so I got really offended by that. And then I would keep reading the blogs where it's money, fame, celebrity, film premieres, and like this kind of thing. And
Yeah.
not saying that there can't be any good content in that or that that isn't rewarding, but it
Right.
seemed to be so off-putting to me that like I actually had this story, which I ended up sharing with with Aaron, with you, with Doug, with a
Yeah.
lot of people. I was just on a couple days ago with Holly, the Scientology geek, talking about it, on and on and on. And I've been on a lot of channels, and we had our own thing with the Dirty Bunch and whatever.
Yeah.
And I've discussed a lot of these things, and it's years and years later. Like I think maybe like at the time it was very disconcerting and very disillusioning to be told that like your story just doesn't matter, especially when it comes to people who literally are choosing what stories to produce or not. And that's what Tony Ortega did. Mark Bunker also, and I never got a conclusion to this. Don't know what happened. Maybe there's something that did happen that was legitimate. But also about 15 years ago ish, he was going to put out a documentary called Knowledge Report, and he interviewed everyone and their mother about Scientology and their experiences. But I tried to get an interview on that, and again, he rejected me, saying it was just a typical story. So it's like I think there's a few people who, while I enjoy some of what they do, I think the environment that we live in, again, going back to money, fame, celebrity,
Hmm.
and so forth, that gets the clicks. But I also think that that's why it's good on smaller channels. And Aaron is not a small channel, and
No.
I talked for 2.5 hours with him,
I
but
think
people are
you did
interested.
at least 2 interviews with him, I think, 'cause
I
I
did
saw a
one.
couple of them.
I did
Oh,
one
maybe
with
he broke it up. It could have been he broke it
Yes,
up.
I did one with Aaron. I've
Yeah.
done two with Chris Shelton, who I haven't talked to her anyways in a few years, but at the same time, I was happy enough to do his. In 2013, there was another friend of mine who passed away a few years back. His name was Rob Robinson. So after about 4 years, so from 2009 to 2013, of
Mhm.
trying and trying and trying to get someone to hear me, this gentleman, Rob Robinson, as I said, he passed away in 2019. He had me on, and he had a podcast. And I went on his podcast and did 3 episodes of his podcast from late 2013 into early 2014. And every time I do interviews, people tell me they're shocked. In some
Yeah.
cases, they like my story. Why don't they hear my story? It's because it's been gate kept. And the thing that made me want to join YouTube was after a while, because people were telling me, why don't you go on YouTube? This is back 10, 15 years ago. Scientology is very litigious, and
Yeah.
they go after people, and I didn't feel comfortable going on YouTube until literally just last year. And even
Mhm.
though I've scaled back, I've had to scale back on some of my participation. I like being guests on programs. I've done a lot of content and stuff that I'm very proud of in the past year. But like, it's not just that easy to just be like, well, just go on YouTube and share your story. It's a gamble. There's a lot of things that are into that. I would have preferred to have gone on like your channel, Aaron's channel, Chris's channel, whatever, where there's already an established audience. And so
Right.
only since Aaron till now, which was in August, I believe, of 2023 when I talked to him. I think 2022 or 2023. But since that
Yeah,
time,
I was saying 2022. Mhm.
2022. Okay, so August
Yeah.
2022. So only since then have I actually been more and more comfortable. But at the same time, it's almost like too late. Like, you know what I mean? I had so much information at the time where we had people who were working illegally in Germany. We had, accounting discrepancies. Nobody cares. Like they did not care, and those things just went under the rug. And
Yeah.
I could have at least brought that to the public's attention, and I did try very hard to establish. One of the things that I will say that I did was when I was living in Los Angeles in the spring of 2009, a German journalist came from Berlin to Los Angeles, and I did get an interview with her. and they put me. I decided to be anonymous, so you have the shadowed out face and whatever. And I did, do some stuff with her. I kind of regret being anonymous, but at the same time, at least I got
Right.
to be in this documentary. But other than that, like, that was in German. They had to translate and whatnot. So I've done as much as I could, but at the same time, I really wanted to do more. And I was being very, very, very much gate kept, if that's a term,
Right.
from telling my story.
So you had very important information that could have incriminated the Scientology in Germany, and you just weren't
Mhm.
being heard. Because I
I mean,
remember,
again,
I remember hearing your
I
story.
wrote a lot of it.
Yeah,
I wrote. I don't mean to interrupt, but I did write a lot of it down on the Ex-Scientology message board, but
okay,
that's all I
yeah,
could do.
yeah, yeah. What was I gonna say? I remember hearing your story. I think I first was introduced to you from watching Doug Kramer's channel. Dazed but not
Mhm.
confused. And you were talking about religion in general, but I was like, this guy's really smart. And then I heard parts of your story that you had been in Scientology, and I just really liked your perspective. I thought I was heartbroken by your story when I had you on my channel. I was like, say again, what? I mean, the starvation and the overwork and the mind games and the amount of intensity, just how they were putting you through the ringer to even try to get out of it. I was like, oh my God. And you were basically trafficked. Like, if that's typical, that just really burns my biscuits to hear that word, because I don't think there's
Yeah.
anything typical about occult abuse. But well, unfortunately, it is. I guess it is typical of Scientology. But to tell you that, yeah, and the thing is, I know. I know from knowing you for a couple years now, you're not a sensational person. You're not one of those people that are like, "Oh, poor me," or "Oh, I want to stick it to them." Like, when you came to me and said, "I want to talk about gatekeeping from my experience, and I have a lot to say about it," I was like, Mark, really? Because you're usually go with the flow. You don't like to make waves. And I really like to pick your brain about academic type things and all the, ins and outs of, you know, like brainiac stuff. So when you wanted to talk about like matters of your own personal story and your own feelings, I was like, come on down, because that's, what I do. I like to just dig down and talk about the heart of the matter. And I feel bad that you were kind of brushed aside. That's not fair.
Well, how I look at it now is, so, when I was in Scientology, I had a lot of different experiences with Sea Org members, and obviously there is a quite a diverse amount. I met Sea Org members that were incredibly like down to earth and humble and relaxed and whatever, but I met a lot that were incredibly elitist, and I kind of hate to say this, but I think when you spend a long time, like in something like the Sea Org, it still it still affects people. Like, you know what I mean? I don't want to say that in a negative way, because I do know, even for myself, that there's a lot of work that has to be done. There's a lot of, you might have to go to therapy, so you have to then trust the therapist. That is not easy coming out of Scientology. That wasn't easy for me as well. It
Right.
took me almost a decade just to trust a therapist, and I was in for 3 years. So I have the utmost sympathy with people who've spent their whole lives in, and it's difficult, for them to heal. Like, so I'm not trying to pass judgment, but it seems like there are people. I mean, I have private messaged people to say, like, here's my story. I'd like to come on your channel. People that, I've been Facebook friends for years. Some people I haven't even met. Doesn't matter, in real life. But like, I just don't think they care. I think that there tends to be, among some Sea Org members, obviously, Chris Shelton was different because I was on his channel twice. Aaron Smith Levin is different. I was on his channel, and a lot of other people don't care. But yeah, when Aaron was talking about how, like, certain people just don't care unless you've interacted with Tom Cruise
Mhm.
or you worked on the int base. I know some of those people who we're talking about, and I don't have any ill will against them. I don't have anything bad to say about them, but there is an attitude that carries over, and I sympathize because it's not easy. Like, we're all trying to heal from this trauma, and this trauma is absolutely brutal. And if you've been in that amount of time for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you can do a lot, but it's still part of your personality. Even myself, like,
Yeah.
by the way, um, I know for a fact, and sometimes I don't. This kind of side of me, if you would like, I try to keep it down, but I do know for sure that if I'm ever, and because I have been in a few situations, where if I'm surrounded by people and they're all almost like ganging up on me, or that we're trying to do a debate, or because I used to go to like meetup groups and we used to talk about all kinds of big issues and stuff. And if I'm surrounded by people and they're all talking at me and telling me I'm wrong and telling me I'm wrong, I get into Scientology mode, which is you become very aggressive, you become very angry, you put your TRs in, you play some games, and I know push comes to shove, that is still with me. Like, my
Mhm.
communication, in some ways, in some scenarios, even though it doesn't appear to be this way at the moment, I do know if you push the wrong buttons, that TR Scientologist, aggressive communication, forceful communication,
Right.
insulting communication does come out of me. And I knew I learned that in Scientology. I was not like that before. And I was
So
only in for three
TRs
years,
just, I mean, most of us would
you
know
know?
what that is, but TRs is
Yeah.
training routines, and you're
Training
learning
routines.
to be like
Yep.
almost um how do you explain it? Like, I was thinking about that Tone
Well,
40 thing where they're always so intense. It's like in your face and just really um yeah, like intense.
it's
Like Tom Cruise.
very,
I think of Tom Cruise, how he's very intense, you know?
I would say
Aggressive.
Scientology communication, just in a nutshell, it's very direct.
Yeah.
It can be interpreted as being very rude and very aggressive. So
Mhm.
you say what's on your mind, like you say, like, "You're annoying me. You're an idiot. Shut up." You know what I mean? There's no compassion. It's like, "I
Right.
think you're a terrible person. Get over it. Goodbye." And I know that people can, if they push the right buttons, I can get into that uh, part of me, and that's why, like,
Mhm.
this is why I've had other experiences with other groups, even going back to as recent as 2020, 2021,
Mhm.
where I have to have some kind of space between those things, because
Yeah.
even I, 3 years, did the TR's course, the successful communication course, and it's very difficult. So now we take that same amount of intensity and aggression and even rudeness and elitism, and we're now multiplying it by, in some case, 10 times for an individual or whatever. And
Mhm.
I get it. It's just disconcerting, but I get it. So it's like, I would love to share my story more, which again was one of the reasons why, after so many years, I finally started this channel. And we also, a couple years back, started talking, and then that channel got taken away. And then now I have this
Oh,
one.
yeah.
But
I was thinking about
at the same time, I sort of get it. So when I message or email someone who's an ex-Sea Org member in base, and they just don't even get back to me when I say, "Hey, I just want to share my story,"
Mhm.
I know I don't know 100% what they're thinking, but I
Right.
can kind of assume that it's more like, well, who cares? And that to me, whether that's 100% true or not, I'm pretty sure that's part of it. And
Yeah.
again, that's what I also find disconcerting, because I don't care if you're in Scientology for, a couple days, or you've been in for, 70 years or whatever. Like, everyone has a story, and I just think this gatekeeping based upon clicks and money and so forth. And I've always said too, my story doesn't come with 2 tickets to a movie premiere. But so what? Is it not any less valid? Like,
Right,
you're never going to go
right.
to the Sundance Film Festival and hobnob with Alec Baldwin or whomever else in that was in that theater when they were talking about going clear. But like, who cares? Like, is that what the line is? Like, or did I have to be in the Sea Org? Did I
Have
have
says
to be on it base? You know what I mean? Anyway, it's very difficult to get out of that culture. So I'm trying at one point to be honest, but also to be compassionate at the same
right,
time.
yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, yeah.
Have said they may be intimidated because you're way smarter than them. That's what I was thinking.
Maybe.
But
I don't know. I try not
yeah,
to be
they're lost. Like,
that
I know.
arrogant, but I
No,
don't
one of
know.
the things that I thought, okay, two thoughts while you were talking that go along with what you're saying when you were describing like how ex-Scientologists act because of Scientology. One thing that Aaron said to me recently on a stream that he said that the two emotions in Scientology that were acceptable. The only two emotions were like this cheerfulness or anger.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you couldn't be like, yeah, you couldn't be emotional in any other way. You couldn't be, sad or fearful or happy. Like you
yeah,
can't be only you can only be those two things. And so it's funny that when someone comes out of Scientology and they're still and they had a certain amount of power and prestige and oversight over people, right? And then you spill it into the ex-Scientology community, and it seems like the same people are the ones that are in charge. And maybe they didn't mean to be. I am trying to be very objective about it, but and I don't pretend to know anyone's motives or thoughts or feelings, whatever. All I can judge from is actions and patterns that I'm seeing. So one of the things that I kind of came to a realization recently was when I was listening to Jenna Miscavige talk about her family and different things, and I know it was very hard for her to reveal those things. I was thinking, wow, I never even knew about Jenna Miscavige until a few years ago because like I was following the whole anti-Scientology movement through the eyes of Leah and Mike Rinder and the base people and all the aftermath show and going clear with nothing wrong with those, but they really helped me. Like I feel like I owe them a debt of gratitude because helped me to
yeah,
deprogram from deconstruct my own experience and realize I was in a cult to begin with. But it's strange, like I never knew that, not that it's their fault, but I never knew that Dave Miscavige even had a niece. So
yeah,
I mean, in a way, like that whole like, well, the name recognition and the fame, I guess in that case, that wasn't that didn't come into play. I think that maybe because Jenna's experience was maybe so painful or not
mm,
pretty or you know what I mean? Like I don't know. I don't know why her story was suppressed in that circle. Although, she ended up having a New York Times bestseller, and
yep,
but
yep,
that was on her own. That was completely on her own, and she was in on the View and uh, Anderson Cooper and all those big shows, but that was never really talked about. It was all
yeah,
the Sea Org kind of experience. And I do feel like it was more geared towards the abuse that David Miscavige inflicted than L. Ron Hubbard necessarily. And it's kind
yeah.
of, in my opinion, it's kind of coming out like, oh, maybe I was right all along.
Well, so I love the aftermath show. I thought it was great. I made a joke online a little while ago that if I was ever going to be on the aftermath show, I wouldn't be on until like season 40. You know what I mean? They wouldn't have asked me at all.
Right.
But it had a purpose. It had a point, right? Mike had come out and I don't think there was anything necessarily wrong with using like Leah Remini, her connections and her stories to sort of further these things. There, of course, was stuff with Miriam and so forth, and you know whatever Mike knew or didn't knew about certain things, obviously took to his grave. So
Mhm.
whatever. And I certainly, by the way, my friend Gary, who I mentioned earlier, um, I never knew if this was true or not. Gary was quite the storyteller, but he always claimed that he worked quite closely with Mike Rinder and talked to me and told me things about him and so forth, which again just had to do with hiding certain abuses or whatever. I don't know if it's true or not, no idea. But it had a good purpose. The fact that they had 3 seasons was great. I wish they had done more. But you're right. I think they were focusing on something different. That it then became more about, once they got over some of the older Sea Org members, like one of my favorite is Hannah. I think her name is Hannah Eltinger. She's like one of my. I used to be friends. Her husband just passed away. I used to be Facebook friends with her husband. Jerry was his name, and we talked a little bit here and there. But they were like old time, one of the first Sea Org members, and
Hannah,
like
right. Okay. Yeah.
Hannah, her story's amazing. I'm
Yeah.
so glad she was on Going Clear. She was on the Aftermath show.
Yeah.
Amazing story. But once you get over those things of the old Sea Org members and stuff, yeah, it seemed to be about focusing on David Miscavige. Now, had they gone for more seasons? Who knows? Right? They only had 3, so who knows?
Mhm.
But yeah, if you get there's a very specific goal that a lot of people are into. And then once you find out what that goal is, they then make every episode just about that one thing.
Mhm.
And in the end, like it's a TV show, so you get a lot of awareness out of it. But does it really there's still a Church of Scientology? David Miscavige is still in charge. Like at the end of the day, what I found out very quickly after leaving Scientology is like, regardless of what's going on, the only thing we can do is bring some of these matters to the forefront. Whether or not the Church of Scientology is going to lose its tax exempt status or even be around in the next few years is beyond everyone's control. We hope it
Mhm.
isn't, right? Like, I hope it's not. I hope they lose their tax exempt status one day. They're probably not going to anytime soon. I hope that the church reforms itself. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it becomes like trying to do something where the goal is just so above one's control. And
Mhm.
then, what happens is then you turn people into celebrities. And, there's a lot of stuff that I loved about that show. But in the aftermath of the aftermath, there was some things that I didn't like, including again the celebritizing
Right.
certain
Right.
aspects of the community, which I found a little disconcerting. Like, why do they
Yeah.
get to go? Why do they get to go to film premieres? Why? Like, it's also my story. Like, I'm an ex-Scientologist. Like, I'm never going to go to these film premieres because my story is typical. So maybe I'm resentful and bitter, but like, shouldn't we all?
You
Shouldn't
don't
that be
strike
for
me as being
everybody?
resentful. I guess it comes to time where
But
it like, just call a
I don't
spade a
know.
spade.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, okay, they win an Emmy. That's fantastic. I thought that was great. They should have won an Emmy. They won it. But like all this
Mhm.
celebrity for people who are already celebrities. Do you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
love Leah Remini's great. She's fantastic. She's already a celebrity. Why don't you share that stuff? Like, why? Like, you know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
even if it happens just once, like at one time, I always have said at one time I would have loved an apology from the Church of Scientology, which will never happen probably in my life. And I would just love to have someone acknowledge my suffering and just do something like just one time. And again, I don't want to sound bitter or resentful, but when I see people at film premieres, I'm like, okay, well, what do I get out of it? And then I'm told, well, these people are sacrificing and they're doing all these things for
Yeah.
me. But it's
Yeah.
like, are they doing it for me or are they doing it for themselves? And they have to
Mhm.
justify that they're doing it for the people like me because I don't think Leah Remini knows who the fuck I am. You know what I mean? I don't
Right.
think so. Like that, I don't think I messaged Mike Rinder once or twice. You know, I don't think he knows or cares about me. Do you know what I mean? So it's like I find it very hard to believe that Sea Org style elitism, which I know very well, while maybe it's dissipated a little bit, I don't think it's totally gone away. And I know that
Right.
mentality. So I know when I see it. And that's something that just irks me. It's again, I'll use the word
Yeah.
disconcerting.
I mean, I don't blame you. And something that has been kind of on my mind lately is this whole thing of like, do we have to be on the same team? Like, obviously,
Right.
they've demonstrated that they don't want to include typical stories or whatever.
Yep.
Fine, but why throw shade and try to, this is my opinion, but I've seen a certain amount of resistance and even projection to us peons, which I'm not from Scientology, but I am a cult survivor,
Yeah.
of kind of, well, we're going to make our own thing, right? We're gonna come
Right.
on YouTube because it's called YouTube. So you can tube, I can
Right.
tube, we all can tube, right? Um,
Right.
it doesn't make it any less valid or more quote typical that okay, we're gonna tell our own stories, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there and again, I'm not pretending to know anybody's motives or anything, but I just find it very strange that about the time that Aaron was inviting you, this was 2022,
Yeah.
2023, you and a lot of the, well, we call them second gens, but a lot of people, a lot of typical
Yeah.
experiences coming on, and they weren't typical. Your story was heartbreaking. So many of them heartbreaking. I never had heard of Laura. I found about Laura. I'm like, oh my God, this is so heartbreaking. And Aaron was having all of these panels. Well, we didn't know, but there was, some tension and hey, let's not rehash the whole thing. Aaron can be a little bit of a slut and a little bit of a jerk and whatever. I mean, we all know that, right? But why the timing of it all, it just seemed very strange because there were the people that were basically had been cast aside now being able to come on YouTube and start their own channels, and there was momentum, right? And there were things that were coming out that I don't think certain people wanted to come out. The terrible abuse, like what Jenna went through, that is magnified by hundreds, if not thousands. And this whole passion, which I share very much with so many of you, of against the abuses, especially children. The whole
Yeah.
children cannot consent. That's something that's always on my heart and mind. So fast forward to now, when there seems to be this rally cry of let's, I'm not saying that Tom DeBach wanted to save Scientology. I guess he wasn't really saying that, but it was like trying to
Right.
meet in the middle.
Yep.
There's certain things I can't compromise on. And, I don't know if you saw Alonzo and DOA talking about how child auditing isn't that bad and all this. I was just like, oh, hold the phone. No, 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 no. I put the
Yeah.
brakes on. Like, no, 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 no. So if I can't stop them if that's what they want to do and think and believe, fine, but I'm not on their team. So I guess that's what like my thing is, that it's not going to be probably very popular, but if I have to kind of draw a line in the sand, I'll do that. And I'll give people who have been oppressed and abused my little platform, however, whatever good it can do, I guess is what I wanted to say.
Well, I just wanted to mention too the reason why I was able to talk to Aaron was because I think a month or two before he had spoken to my friend. Her name was Sabrina David from Switzerland. She's from Basel, Switzerland, because we worked together in Berlin. And I have not met many people who I worked with in Berlin who were out of Scientology. So Aaron sat down with her and spoke to her. She had been in Scientology since she was a teenager. She's not a second gen, she's a first gen, but she had, she was in the Basel org about because of a high school friend got her in. And then she was on staff in Berlin for a very long time when I was there, and then even longer, I think maybe 10 years or something. So, that's the reason. So that's how I got introduced with Aaron.
Mhm.
Because we crossed paths, right? Like I was this, in Berlin for 9 months. Sabrina was there at the same time, and again, it's a story of just a regular person, so to speak, if that's even a thing,
Right.
getting into something, going on staff. Those are the
Mhm.
stories that most people will go through. Most people don't end up being, second hand or second fiddle to David Miscavige. Most people don't even, in Scientology, most people don't even know where Golden Era Productions is. You're not supposed to know. you sign a $100,000 bond that if you work at Gold Base and you tell them that Gold Base is near Hemet, California, you owe the church $100,000. So again, it's like, I don't know, like it's almost like if you come back from war and you're only interviewing the generals who didn't fight on the front lines,
Yeah.
because the privates, well, they're the officers, well, they're the ones who are fighting on the front lines. Like, yeah, okay, Patton has an interesting story, and so did Eisenhower, but like, don't you want to actually, like, to me, it's more interesting to see like the people in the boats going over to Normandy or something. Like, that's the interesting story, not the people who are making the decisions. Like, that's
Right.
interesting, okay, but there's a
Yeah.
totally different perspective. And so that's what I kind of put it in. And again, the other put it as to, but again, the other thing is, again, it goes back to that culture. It's such a different, such a microculture in
Mhm.
Scientology, and then
Mhm.
Scientology theory is another microculture, and all of these characteristics that you're talking about is just predicated within those cultures and microcultures within Scientology. And this is why I just like to say, like, I get it. I think it's I think it's not good, but I
Right.
get it. You know what I mean? And so yeah, okay. So Tom DeVocht, I only know a little bit about him. Again, I've never met him, never talked to him, but
Mhm.
I do know his story from the aftermath. I do know parts about him. I'm glad that he's out. I'm glad that I think he's married, has kids. Like, that's fantastic. He spent most of his life in Scientology and the Sea Org. If he wants to save Scientology, God bless him. I don't really care about that, but that's his prerogative. But what I find disconcerting are, yeah, Sea Org members telling other Scientologists and people like yourself, Marilyn, never ends, and people who may have been staff or whatever, who are telling never ends and other people how to do their criticism.
Mhm.
And that is something that I discovered even when I was protesting all the way back in 2009, 2010 in Los Angeles. There's always someone's quote unquote way to do something. And if you're not following it, you're going to get an earful. And that, again, is very Scientological, because that is part of the snitching culture. That's part of the micromanagement. And that stuff is indoctrinated into you. That stuff is not, it's a learned thing. So, for
Mhm.
example, if you're not doing something right in Scientology, as per L. Ron Hubbard, you will know it, even if 12 people in one day tell you something like you're not. I remember when I first got to the org, I was cleaning. This is just a basic example. Well, if you don't clean the way L. Ron Hubbard wants you to clean,
Right.
every single fucking person is going to come to you and say you're cleaning wrong. This is how you're supposed to clean. This is how you're
Right.
supposed to put a rag over or collect dust. That's what they're doing. They're just
Yeah.
expressing the stuff that they've learned, that they grew up with, or that they learned over a couple decades.
Yeah.
I would just tell them in the most broadest, most honest way to go screw themselves, and just tell them, keep telling them, no, because this is something with Scientology. Scientology's way, meaning Ron's way, is the only way. And so you get that kind of mentality that bleeds into when you leave.
Yeah.
So just tell them no, and if you don't like it, be honest with them. Say, then don't. Why are you watching my channel? Like, are you
Right.
just watching
Yeah.
it in order to critique and
Yeah.
tell me what I'm doing wrong? That's stupid. You're a loser. Tell them that
Yeah.
you're a loser. You're an idiot. Get out of my face. And you have to be like that with Scientologists. I know it sucks. It shouldn't
Yeah.
be. We all should be polite Canadians. Oh yeah, hey, oh yeah, hey,
Well,
sorry, hey.
that was,
But like,
yeah, that
just
was
tell them
my
to go
thought. That was my
F
thought, is
themselves.
instead of telling us how we're doing it wrong, why
Yeah,
don't you just go do it your way, do it right, do it the
yeah.
right way.
But
Um,
that's
I'm all
mentality.
on board. I wish I had the
Yeah,
goods on Dave Miscavige and could get him indicted and thrown in jail. I would love to see that. Go for it. I don't have any, way to help with that necessarily, except for maybe, just getting the word out if it happens, or, you know,
yeah.
like whatever the movement. But that's not my focus. Like, that's not something I can do. So it's like, don't shame people for not doing it. Just go do it. That's great. You know?
But
So
the other
that's the
thing is
thing is,
we have to be real. There is
yeah.
no smoking gun that's going to end Scientology. Stop looking for it.
Yeah.
Over the years, whether it was someone who currently left the Sea Org, they're like Debbie Cook, she was going to be the smoking gun. Nobody, Scientology survived. The Tampa Bay Times did the Truth Rundown, great piece.
Yeah.
That was going to be the smoking gun. There's no smoking gun. Scientology is going to, and it's happening right now. This is what Aaron alludes to. It's shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking because
Mhm.
it cannot get new members. That's what's going to destroy Scientology. Not one person, not one lawsuit, nothing is going to
Right.
do it. It's going to take a long time, and it may not even happen in our lifetime. There may still be a Church of Scientology in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, because since the thing began, everyone has been saying, oh, it's the end is imminent. The end is imminent. As I said, Scientology is probably not going to get its tax exempt removed. You can try and do all that you can and talk to your congressperson, or if you're in another country, you're a member of parliament or whatever, but like it's not going to. So the best thing is to do passive information, which is you just share the
Mhm.
truth about Scientology, and people like us who are on this stream. Okay, I don't know how many people are on the stream right now, but that's how many people who are not
70
in
people
Scientology.
watching.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, 70 people watching right now.
Okay. If 70 people join Scientology in multiple orgs today, it would actually be amazing for Scientology.
They
And
would
I'm
love
not
that.
even
Yeah.
kidding you. Some of you,
Yeah.
some of you might, maybe by chance, let's say there's a couple of people in London. There's 3 people in London. If 3 people in London joined the Church of Scientology today, they would be ecstatic. If 5 people joined in Boston, they would be ecstatic. That's
Yeah.
like not that number is so infinitesimal. But if 70 people joined the Church of Scientology today, that would be remarkable for them. Well,
Be a
70
big
people are
deal.
not joining, so that's the positive. That's what we will do. So don't be too grandiose, because there is no smoking gun. Like there really isn't. It's not going to be one event or one person. I
Yeah.
think had if the gentleman, remember Pat and Annie Broker,
Yeah.
I really would love to see Pat Broker come out and say something. But at this point, it's not going to end the church. If
Right.
anything, it will just reinforce what we already know. There's no OT9, there's no OT10, etc. So it's a
Yeah.
lot of confirmation bias. It would just be nice, but that's not going to end the church. Like no one thing. And I also think that we are human. We need to have hope. When we see an injustice, we have to remedy it, but we have to do it realistically. We can't just go chasing after wild goose chases, because I've been on those things for years, where you get your hopes up that like Debbie Cook is going to be the person who ends everything, and then
Mhm.
life takes over. And yeah, she took money and she's quiet. Good for her, to be honest with you.
Right.
If someone gave me a huge sack of money, you know what I mean, and that was the requirement, was to go live my life and be wealthy, I probably would take it in some cases. You know what I mean, if I
Yeah.
were
You know
her.
what you value,
So
right?
like, yeah, I mean, you suffer for 20, 30 years, and then someone cuts you probably 7-figure check, and you go live in the Caribbean. I'm not against that. Okay, so it's not going to be one person. It's not going to be one story. It's basically, again, this idea that however many people there aren't in Scientology who are
Mhm.
objective, or what would be the word, they're offended by Scientology, they don't want to join Scientology. That's the best we can hope for, and that's happening
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, I was thinking about William Good, the work that he does on the street,
Yeah,
the testing
exactly.
center. He's probably kept Scientology from many, many, new recruits.
Mhm.
So if you freeze them out, like I think anybody under 40 that's heard about Scientology knows that it's a cult,
Yeah,
And so
pretty
I
much.
don't think I think they're going to be deprived of new members, and a lot of the older members are unfortunately passing away in terrible,
Yeah,
terrible conditions. But just raising the profile of the abuses, and not just Dave Miscavige, but all the
Exactly.
abuses. It's not just one person. He's not Scientology.
Yeah.
One thing I do agree with Tom DeVos, a lot of things I did agree with what he said. And I don't think he meant this, but he said, we were Scientology. Yes, you
Right.
were. Yes, you were. Not in the way that he meant it, but the way that I took it was, yes, it's not Scientology that did all of
Yeah.
this terrible shit. It's
Yeah.
the people that were in there. They were brainwashed. Yes. I have tons of compassion. Yes, because I was that in that type of situation. So I do understand it, but it doesn't make it right, and it doesn't give somebody the right to exclude anybody else's you know thrust of what they feel is important, what they want to talk about, what they want to focus on. And again, like, I felt like, I'm free to not have the same exact focus as someone else. And if
Yeah.
someone likes Scientology, I don't have to like them. I don't have to like Scientology. I'll like them, but I don't like Scientology. So if Scientology isn't a cult, then why am I here? You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like, if they want to think Scientology is not a cult, or they want to like Scientology, whatever, that's fine. But don't tell
Yeah.
me I have to be on your team, because I'm not.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like that too. Again, whatever. I know we've had some questions about independence and free zones, which we can get to later. I'm
Yeah.
I'm
I
neutral
have,
on that.
oh
I don't.
wow, you
I'm
have
just
quite a
whatever.
few really good comments
We'll
I
we'll
want to.
get to that. We'll get to that, and I'll tell you my opinion. I do want to say though that again, I have an opinion on that. And I think I have some evidence, whether it's subjective or not. It doesn't matter. But at the same time, I will just reiterate that if you want to, this is the issues. The problem with Scientologists and ex-Scientologists is that um, if if they go low, you have to go lower. So I think it's pretty low telling people how they should be running their channels. So you got to go lower, and that means that you do have to. The examples I gave of just telling them, cursing at them, swearing at them, telling them to go f themselves. You have to do it. It
Mhm.
really sucks. I'll tell you. Um, if you are someone out there who is still receiving phone calls and mail from the Church of Scientology, asking politely is not going to stop. You have
Right.
to yell at them. You have to scream at them. You have to do that. You can't just say, hey, could you please, would you mind? I would like it if no. You have to essentially lose your mind. And it's will take a lot out of you. It's something you might not
Mhm.
want to do, but in the end, you're going to get off their radar. And I find it's very similar for ex Scientologist critics who gatekeep and criticize others. You tell them to go F themselves in the most absolute brutalist way you can, and eventually they'll just run away with their tail between their legs, and you'll be in peace. And it sucks. It absolutely sucks. You
I have
still
done.
in a humane interpersonal where, hey, is it
Right.
okay? Stop talking to me, or it would be better if that's not how they operate. It's just and it just isn't. And again, no matter how you feel, I'm telling you, you have to be aggressive and you have to use curse words. You don't want to do it. Unfortunately, the end result is they're still going to be attacking you. So if you want any advice from an ex-Scientologist, bull bait them, and you can find what that means online. You bull bait them, and they will eventually go away, like 2-year-olds.
Wild. That's wild. That's just so.
That's how,
I mean, listen. I've had times when, well, it's not my proudest moments, but recently, I was called a racist by an ex-Scientologist, and I looked at the camera and I said, "Go fuck yourself." And that is just
yeah,
so not like, I beat myself up for days, but you know what? I left it up because I was like, I I don't know. It was like it brought out the worst in me, but I was like, "Well, I'm
yeah,
not gonna just shrink. I'm not gonna just
no,
let that go, because that's not okay, and it's not true." So, it definitely has given me more of a backbone being in this space, because, like, I have so much criticism, and a lot of it I take to heart. I really do listen to people, especially that I really, um, respect. right? But I don't have respect for people who just shut others out and
Yeah.
dictate things and then fail to, like, there's all these trolls running around that are basically defending a certain group of ex-Scientologists
Yeah.
and constantly attacking survivors who are advocating for children and advocating for,
Yeah.
people who have stories that really could at least help to indict the church,
Yep.
like the cover-ups of child SA. How many of those stories have you heard? Like from like I mean, just saying, Miriam was really the only one that really came forward
Yeah.
with the Aftermath show and
Mhm.
laid that out. And here she's still trying to get justice, and hopefully she will soon.
I hope so too. But yeah, again, this is if you got to fight fire with fire, as they say. And as I said, like I just know the culture in Scientology, and I know that for they might seem to be attack dogs in the facade, but they're really really terrified cowards. Scientologists um, will act all aggressive, but like if you go and protest them, they cower because they don't want to be upset. And so it's like they're not attack dogs, they're cowards, and you just have to show them that you are more of an attack dog, and you will get them to stop. And it
It's just funny
unfortunately
hearing
it works for
hearing that
Texas
from
as
you because
well.
you're such a very like low key
Yeah,
guy.
but I have my attack dog stuff too. Like I mean, I do. Just talk about other things that grind my gears, and we can get into it. But I don't know. I just yeah. To me, again, um, a lot of it is just you have to fight fire with fire. And again, I know this stinks.
Yeah,
Or you just ghost people. You just ignore them. The other thing I want to say is like there's words that when I was growing up, and I'm sure when you were growing up, Marilyn, like racist and stuff, which it used to have such a meaning, and now it is
yeah,
used
yeah,
all the time. If you don't agree with someone, you're a
yeah,
racist. If
yeah.
you have a different opinion, it's like that's a word along with a lot of other words that
Yeah.
have been totally misused. And honestly, in the culture we live in today, somehow, unless you figured out later that you were being racist, like legitimately, and you have to walk it back and apologize, okay. But if you disagree with someone, to be called racist and you haven't said anything about anyone's race or whatever, it's
No.
so pathetic. Like it's really
No.
just to shut people up. And there's a lot of people, and I would say to tell people, don't don't like stand your ground and say
Stopping cliches. Yeah.
like this wasn't about race. I didn't say that one group of people were inferior to another. So,
Hmm.
this is stupid, and bark back. And I'm telling
Right.
you, people are not,
Yeah, I know in my heart of hearts, I
I'll
don't
bark,
believe
they'll
that.
bite.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know it was just ridiculous, but
yeah,
it just
I'll
pissed
bark,
me
they'll
off.
bite. So
Yeah.
those
Well,
people are
something I was
cowards
talking
anyways.
to Liz Gale about the other day because we were talking along the same kind of lines about a little bit of gatekeeping and her guttural visceral reaction to Tom DeVock and all that, and we
Right.
were talking about these thought stopping cliches and these things that are overused and things are misused from Scientology. It's like all of a sudden, like if you say something that I don't like, or you're trying to express yourself or point out something that someone said that you believe is wrong, you're dead Asianing them. You're
Yeah,
gaslighting them. You're a narcissist. You're this, you're that. And it's like, whoa, 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 wait a minute.
I know.
And
And that's
especially in
that's a
never in
lot of
using the term gas or using the term dead agenting all the time. That like that's not
yeah.
appropriate.
Well, that's another thing too in Scientology is if you ever get your hands on the ethics book, you'll just know that every word that comes out of your mouth can be misconstrued to do something like to legitimately it becomes so annoying after a while. Like if you get an order from your senior and you simply ask why, that's Q&A. And it's like, just
What
give
does
me
that stand for?
questions and answers. You're not supposed
Oh,
to
so
have
it
Q&A. So
yeah, but what does that
basically, if you
mean?
get an order from your senior,
I
you
know what
just go
Q&A is, but what does that
don't
mean in
ask why.
Scientology?
Questions and answers. It just means you've questioned or you've asked why you're getting an order. So you just do it. Basically, you
Oh,
don't
so
ask
that's a
why. You
bad.
do it.
So no Q&A. It's bad.
Yeah, no
So just
Q&A.
shut up and do it.
Open-minded is
Got it.
negative. You're not supposed
So
to
it's
be
like back
open-minded.
talk or whatever.
If you're,
Gotcha.
yeah, all this again, every word that comes out of your mouth is wrong. So you just don't even say anything, and you just do whatever the person wants you to do. That's
Right.
Scientology, because there's 45 things that you're gonna say instinctively, and they're all wrong, and it's always making a mountain out of a molehill and whatever. And that, again, a lot of that stuff is taken. Um, and it's to me, it's just annoying. You just can't have a real conversation face to face with anyone because
Yeah.
they're in their mode, and you
Right.
can't crack that safe.
Yeah. That's so frustrating. I mean, I know people like
It
that.
is.
I
Yeah,
people that aren't even Scientologists or ex-Scientologists that are like that. Just contrary.
yeah.
People are just like, yeah,
They're just
shut you down.
swept
So
up
can
in
we
their
take
own
some of
mentality.
these questions? We got
Of
quite a
course, yes,
few.
yeah. There's quite a
Okay,
few.
so
So yeah.
we'll take Giorgio's question first. Mark, did you ever consider joining the Free Zone movement? Were you ever approached to join the Free Zone Scientology movement?
So no, when I left Scientology, I decided that even if by some reason it was all just David Miscavige, I still had a lot of problems with that factor. Like I just wasn't a fan of Hubbard, and couldn't really put together that Hubbard was some amazing person, but Miscavige wasn't.
Right.
Um, but some people have to do that for whatever reason. The sunk cost fallacy. They can't give up what they've devoted their life to, and so they go because it makes them feel like, oh, I didn't waste my whole life on this. There's still some part with that. That's just an emotional, experiential thing that I again fine with them as long as they're not hurting anybody. That's fine.
Right.
But you usually don't get approached to do free soda or independence. You usually have to seek out, usually online through various websites. They don't proselytize. So I would say, like, if Scientology, and I've talked to this with our late great friend Doug,
Yeah.
if Scientology was only independents and free zones, to me they'd be misguided, but they don't proselytize. There's not much abuse. The, the
Right.
the the cost can vary, but usually it tends to be a little bit less harmful. Maybe not entirely,
Wait, they don't have
but
those
that
communal, they don't have like a Sea Org thing or a
no, they don't
cadet
have
org
anything.
or
Yeah, and
right, right.
again, maybe there are some abuses and
Elder
stuff
abuse
from
and
free zone families,
yeah.
but it's different because they don't have that structural hierarchy. So
Mhm.
yeah, so that would be my question, which is no, I never considered it, or my answer would be no, I never considered it. You're not approached, but the
Gotcha.
positives that I get out of it is that it's much more reformed, and more laid back than regular Scientology. And from what I understand, it's also a lot cheaper.
Mhm.
So, you can do all your OT levels in the free zone for a tenth of the cost or something or less. So, anyway, I see it as something productive, even though it's misguided.
Gotcha. Hey, Eric Rader, good to see you. And we got Scooter Mama. Hi, all lurking, but the Canadian version is thank you for your opinion. I'll go F off into the forever. Yes.
Pretty much,
That's
eh?
so polite.
Well, I
That's
mean, being
great.
from Toronto, I know my Canadians, my cultural
Yeah.
politeness.
My husband, this was a while ago, probably an hour ago, but my hubby stopped in. Hey, Hun and Mark, he calls me Hun. Wonderful viewers and beautiful day. Yes, it is beautiful. I gotta get outside a little while.
Could be calling me Han. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, well, you're cute.
I kid.
Peter Anderson says, thankfully your time in Scientology was short. Not so many people were
Yeah.
that lucky. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even 3 years, I mean, that's enough. Yeah, that's definitely, they say it takes what, 6 weeks to form a habit. So 3 years is quite a
Right.
long time.
I
But
was in it, so you know what I mean. Like it wasn't. I was devout, so yeah, a devout
mhm.
3 years.
This is interesting because coming from a lifelong journalist. Joel McCoy, Tony O is an old school reporter. They chase the big names, and that is why now so many real people are sick of him. He will never change. Follow the money. He is money driven, and
Yeah.
that's a valid opinion.
Yeah,
And
I
I could
know that
see what you're saying.
Aaron has called him like a grifter and a cloud chaser. I don't disagree. It just
Mhm.
took me a long time to figure that out.
Yeah,
But you know what? Whatever. I would highly, highly doubt that he, even though he interviewed me years ago, I would highly doubt he even knows who I am or remembers my name because again, my story doesn't come with 2 tickets to a film premiere, and I think that's why he's doing it, and that's the
yeah,
feeling I get. If there's a
yeah.
problem with that, fine, but that's what I get out of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I noticed that, Joy Vila was definitely got an instant attention from him
Yeah,
and his little friend from the UK that was blowing
yeah,
up her DMs, immediately.
yeah.
But if it was somebody, typical like you and I, that would definitely wouldn't have happened. But whatever.
No,
Oh well. Jojo says, I admire Mark for coming on and telling his story. Yes,
thank
if
you,
you
Jojo.
haven't seen the other streams we've done, I feel smarter just being in your your digital presence. But I like to pretty much talk about anything with you. I think it's great. Uh, I couldn't believe how different people looked. Aaron has definitely had a glow up. Oh, from the aftermath show.
Right.
Okay, gotcha. Sharona says they're trying to keep the hierarchy going. Very sus to me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that very
And,
much.
uh,
It's toxic.
yeah. And I have to laugh when people call me a grifter or even, Aaron or whoever that we're grifting. It's like coming from people that seem to be whining about money and like some of the trolls and some of the other people who seem to really want, that kind of fame and fortune, even out. I mean, I've said this before. I had a pretty extensive week or two long exchange with Mike Rinder back and forth, and
Wow.
he
Okay.
made it clear. Yeah, I mean, I've shared it, some of it with people, but I'd be happy to share it with you. One of these days, I might like people have asked me to publish it in its entirety. I don't know if I'll ever do that. I feel like no, I don't know. I don't know. I don't really it's not I don't want to cause any trouble. I just feel like the truth is the truth, and
Yeah.
he made it very clear that his number one focus was not my concerns about the Aftermath Foundation as much as it was bringing Aaron down and wanting to make me hate Aaron. That
Yeah.
was the focus. And this was a year before he passed, about a year before he passed. So it wasn't like at the
Yeah.
end when people were like, oh, his neuron, you know what I mean? Like his
Yeah.
brain was cancerous. That wasn't the case. So yeah. So I said all that to say there's a lot of projection going on, a lot of things that have happened that are as was it Sharona said a little sus. So I don't know. I don't pretend to know people's motives, but I do see some very strange actions and reactions and patterns, you know. Take it
Yep.
for what it's worth,
And a
I
lot of
guess.
that again, a lot of that could be a mix of things, but I still think the being raised a certain way in that
Yeah.
environment plays a role. And when you leave, there's a lot of healing and there's a lot of stuff that is on the turnaround, but it's
Mhm.
very difficult for a lot of people to just become a completely different person overnight. It takes a long time.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of strides that are made with our exes and ex people, but there's always going to be a little bit of the Scientology self still around a little bit, and that's just kind of the reality of the situation. So, and
Yeah,
how we
people
react.
talk a lot about having grace, and grace is a little bit of a trigger word for me because coming from where I came
Right,
from. But I think of grace as more like space, like giving
right,
people space to grow and to learn and to
yeah,
deconstruct what's happened to them.
exactly.
And everybody is different. Like even though like when you're in a cult, it seems like there's this total top down kind of cookie cutter thing, but that's not the way reality is, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
like this is an example from Constance June. I was thinking this is really good with Jenna. some are just jealous. Jenna has a unique experience, treated better in some ways as a child, but treated way worse as an adult because of expectations of the last name. That's a really good point. It's
Yep.
like because
Very good.
she had a certain expectation because of who she was. But really, who are the Miscaviges? Like, how are they? You know, as my dad used to say, they put their pants on one leg at a time like everybody else. It's like we're all human, you know, and have carrying over that whole hierarchy of like hero worship. I just don't think it really has any room for, you know, that shouldn't be any room for that in this space.
I
But
agree. Yeah, absolutely.
so what else we got here? Um Constance says the executives not talking about Tom only focus on Miscavige for a reason. They have put focus on him for a reason. Do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think that
I
would
think
be?
it's well, I mean, first of all, David Miscavige is the leader. I mean, there's no other leader. We when I was in the church, when I was a member, we used to think that there was like tons of management, and he was just the head of RTC, so he was important. But then there was executive director International Church of Scientology International, so there was a
Right.
whole panel of people, a whole host of people. But he's the leader. He's getting rich off of it. He profits from it. He's also in charge of Author Services Incorporated, which holds all the copyrights to all of Hubbard's
That's right.
publication, and
Yep.
that is profit based. So it's an easy target to go on, and he's done a lot of horrific stuff that thankfully a lot of the public knows about now because of
Yep.
shows like The Aftermath and so forth.
Yeah.
But he's a hard cookie to crack because he's protected, and it's great to see him in court. It's great to see him get depositions. It's great. It's great. It's great. But again, I don't know even if he is deposed and admits it's all a scam, what's that going to do? Like, I just don't have a lot of optimism that he's going to
Right.
break down what court that's all going to be over.
Right. What do you say to people who would, basically express that a lot of the ex-executives, they tended to, and this is, my opinion too, but not necessarily everyone's opinion, that they seem to focus more on the abuses from Miscavige than the injustices in general of like Scientology itself. Like I said earlier, we didn't hear a lot about the child abuse and the cover-ups and all those things. You didn't hear a lot about that. You still don't really. I mean, as far as those channels go or the
Right.
blogs, you do sometimes, but it's more of the star-studded things and the things that experiences of people who it's almost like sanitized in a certain way. So like what I'm asking you is like, do you think there's anything to that thing of people maybe even having stayed in if they hadn't been, demoted to the hole or abused by Miscavige?
Well, I mean, it's hard. That's hard to say. Maybe some people would have, maybe some people wouldn't have. But I think again, um, whether this was done consciously or unconsciously, it seemed like what a lot of those people went through that during the time in the hole, obviously for good reason, really, really made them angry and really, really hurt them. It created a lot of trauma, and so
Mhm.
cycled around or circled around that trauma. And
Mhm.
of course, you want to seek justice for that. And I guess because it was so real, there were multiple witnesses. They had testimonies. They had, I mean, Mike Rinder, when he came out and did the John Sweeney interview, was like
Yeah.
40, 50 pounds lighter. I mean, you could tell something was going on. And I think maybe they didn't mean to uh, ignore the abuses of like the cadet orgs or whatever of those schools, but I think it just became the focus. And we could put that on David Miscavige because David Miscavige made clear decisions with the abuse of his power to torture these people and make them play musical chairs and do all these horrific things. And so, had he not done that, uh, and had Scientology in general just not be as restricting and so forth, yeah, I'm sure a lot of people would have stayed. But
Mhm.
he really angered a lot of people, and he's stupid and he's an idiot because the last thing you want to do is scare away your most loyal people. Like
Yeah.
that's the last thing you want to do. It's like Stalin
Yeah.
during the Persians. Like
Right.
you don't do that. If you keep when Saddam Hussein had that meeting
I was gonna
and
say,
people were
yeah, that's
going
what I
out
was saying. Like they
and
poison their own people, and
yeah,
yeah,
and then you hear gunshots. It's like these people like you. So I think it's a trauma bond, and I understand.
yeah.
And if they don't like the fact that it's not on David Miscavige, that's because of a trauma bond. And again, the only thing that I would hope is in the future they can kind of come down on that a little bit and say all of our stories are
Mm-hmm.
equal.
Right.
Like, I don't care if you rode on Tom Cruise's motorcycle. I don't care if you audited a celebrity. I don't care if you were, the janitor for a year. Like, no ivory towers, no gatekeeping, just bring
Right.
everything down. And that's again, I think that's the trauma response. And I
Yeah,
think
there's been
maybe,
plenty of abuse
yeah,
that
right,
wasn't by done by David Miscavige's hands that are
yeah.
just as traumatic, I think, and wrong. So yeah,
Well, I
so
would say
curious.
too, like in other situations, there'd be like a third party. So, you go to couples therapy, you go to grief counseling, you have a problem with your boss, you go to HR. But in
Yeah.
in our community, there's no third party. And who would be the third party? I'm not going to be the third party. I don't want to hear complaints from other people.
No, the
Like,
crisis
it's almost
manager.
like we
No,
have to create an HR department.
yeah.
But who wants
No,
to do
because
that?
that's like we're all adults. We're just gonna do our own fucking
I
thing,
know.
right? It's like
But that's the reason.
whatever.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
When there isn't that third party, when there isn't an HR department, it just
Right.
means that you have one person and another person constantly at each other. You don't have an intermediary being like, hold on, let's go to our corners, let's talk about it.
Mhm.
But that's also a very real life thing too, because not every place has a third party, especially in interpersonal conflict.
Mhm.
It's just the way it is. And like you say, we have to be adults
Yep.
eventually.
This is interesting. Peter Anderson says yesterday, Joy Vila on Growing Up in Scientology talked about how people are going to South Africa for cheaper services, which ASL
Yeah,
pointed out would be wrong by policy.
yeah.
Interesting.
I've heard about that because different orgs do tend to charge different things, especially Sea Org orgs. Like Flag is like the most expensive, and to do every
Mhm.
course at Flag is like a couple $100,000. But that's not the same everywhere. And
Right.
if the other thing is, I may have mentioned this before too. If you go to Scientology with a book that's used, like if you say to them, well, I'm not going to spend $35 on a hardcover Dianex book. I can find one on used on eBay, the same edition, but for
Right.
$5, that's a
Yeah.
no-no. That's a no-no at all. Wouldn't you think? Hey, you
So
you have the
obvious.
information. No. So yeah,
Yeah.
so that's a big no-no. You pay their prices, or you don't do it at all. It's
Yeah, like,
absurd.
but I mean, Bibles, you just get them we used to get them in the hotel rooms and everything. They're
Yeah,
everywhere, you know?
Gideon's is in every.
Yeah.
I think in most hotels. It depends on. I think most of the chains and stuff. If you stay,
Mhm.
I think at the Hyatt or the Marriott, owned by Mormons, is the Marriott. I think you get a Book of Mormon and you get a Bible,
Really
and their
interesting.
version, which is the King James. I think it's Marriott or Hyatt. Someone could fact check me on that one.
Yeah,
But
the
you will.
Gideon
You get
Bibles,
free literature. I
I think they
stayed
were
in a.
King James.
I, I stayed in a Best Western once in Burbank. The owners were Hare Krishnas, and they had their holy book, which is called the Bhagavad Gita as is, in
Huh.
the drawer. So
Yeah, interesting.
for free.
That's wild.
Yeah,
Arkansas Flamingo says Scientology does change your neural pathways. So sad.
well, for sure. Yeah, it
Yeah, I
reconstructs
really does.
your psychology. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, All right, some of these we've already touched on. So, oh, I know. Yeah, this is basically kidnapping, right? I mean, you hear it over and over. It's wild how many times Jenna was held against her will and nothing ever happened to the cult for
Yeah,
that. Yeah, it's terrible.
it's tough. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I'm just going through some more. Hef says, if they were doing it for the benefit of others, they would have told the whole truth, not just whitewashed version that made them look saintly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Also I remember a saying that I heard a little while ago, which is everyone is the hero in their own stories. So even though you might have a
Yep.
conflict with someone and you think they're not doing good, in their mind, it's the opposite. And this is
Mhm.
why perspective can be so conflicting, because the people who are telling you, Marilyn, what you should be doing, they're not looking at it from I'm controlling and I'm micromanaging. They're thinking, well, I'm going to say something or do something that's going to make her content better, and therefore it will reach more people or whatever. Even though, from your perspective, they're bossy, they're invasive, and so forth. So again, it kind of can be both at the same time,
Yeah.
because they have their own thoughts, you have your own thoughts. You're
Yeah.
interpreting it, they're interpreting it. I agree that it's bad, but that's because I agree. you
Yeah,
know?
I'm gonna fight back a little bit on this one. Um,
Yeah,
number one, who asked you? Not
yeah,
you, but nobody
I
fucking
know.
asked them. The other thing is,
I agree though, but
I'm thinking of a certain supervillain person, movie through record guy, kept telling me to be discreet. And number
right.
one, didn't ask them. Number two,
Yeah.
discreet is a trigger word, just like grace. Having a
Okay.
gentle,
Okay.
discreet spirit, cover your head and sit in the back and submit to your husband. That's the
Yeah.
connotation I get with that. So that I fight back on, because I'm
Yeah.
here to tell my story and to be, loud and proud and talk about all the things, right? So if people
Right.
tell me not to talk about something, it makes me want to talk about it more. It's like that
Yeah.
rebellious thing. I was told
I like it.
I have a spirit of a demon spirit of rebellion. Well, maybe I do.
You and me both.
Yeah. Sharona
Yeah.
says the arrogance is palpable too many times. You could almost see their hand brushing away the peons. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
like that. It's true though. I got that. Maybe not everybody got that feeling, but I did too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, this I understand why this didn't happen, because I've kind of been in that position, that kind of Stockholm syndrome thing. The poor adults who had to fend for themselves. Why did none of them team up and overthrow Dave Miscavige? Fear, like
It's
that group
all
thing.
fear. It's all fear. Again,
Yep.
we had I asked that, so when I was talking with Holly a couple days ago, it's the same thought that runs in my head. It's like, I lived only a few blocks from a police station. Well, I could have gone in there and said, look, like, I'm really not supposed to be here. I've got this residence permit that it's not really good. Like, why didn't I just like wake up in the middle of the night and just leave, just go to the airport and leave? Like, nobody would have known. Do you know what I mean? If I went to the airport at 5 in the morning and I picked a flight back home that was super early, nobody would have been none the wiser. But one of the reasons is, when you're in Scientology, especially when you're on staff or in the Sea Org, you get something called a freeloader bill, which means if you don't finish your contract, which is basically lifetime
So
in the Sea
ridiculous.
Org, two and
Right.
a half or five years of staff, you have to pay back all of the courses and auditing and everything that you've done to the church, or else you can never do Scientology again. And they
Wow.
drill that
Really?
into you. And I know for a lot of people would say, who cares? Scientology's BS. Okay. But if you believe it and you really want to do Scientology and you think it's the only thing that you can do to be a better person, you will jump through hoops.
Yeah.
And those hoops are incredible. So, yeah, I didn't go to the police. I told Aaron, and just to be very brief, I told Aaron about an incident where they had me take a bunch of money to Copenhagen to go to the CLO and drop off the money. Looking back, there was like 5,000 euros that they gave me. I could have easily taken 5,000 euros, gone anywhere
Right.
in Europe, and taken a plane home with that money. Why didn't I? You know what I mean? Why did I? And I don't have an answer. So this is why I'm very skeptical on words like reason and rational and logic, because there are things in this world that defy those things, and I
Yeah.
don't think people think that way. I think we have a psychology that's very complicated, very
Yeah.
irrational, emotional,
Yeah.
and I can't give a good reason.
Yeah, and if you're your heart's in the right place, you're a true
Yeah,
believer, you want to do right, you
yeah,
don't want to do anything that's going to tarnish your own sense of your conscience, right? So
yeah,
like I remember Joy Vila said something the other day of like, oh, I didn't even want to read that or hear that or see that tweet or anything because I didn't want to end up in ethics and having to
yeah.
confess basically and pay all this money to have a handling.
Mhm.
And I was the same way. We didn't have to go to ethics or whatever, but it was like God knew, right? And then I had this sense of like this confession problem where I would just confess things
Yeah,
I didn't even do. It was like just a thought, like a fleeting thought that you don't
yeah.
even entertain. I would have this like confession thing I'd have to confess to Marlene or whoever was over me at the time. So it's like, yeah, you meant well and you wanted to do the right thing, so you just did it, and you were able to be trusted because you
Mhm.
had internalized the doctrine and you wanted to do the greater good, whatever. Yeah, I get it. I mean,
Yeah.
unfortunately, the people
And
over you don't have those good motives, but yeah,
no.
yeah. So we got some people from your channel, Dark Rose Siren. So glad I can watch
Hey.
this on Mark's channel, rewinding to start from the beginning.
Oh,
Glad
hey,
to
how
see
are you?
another video.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much. Yeah.
That's
Good to
great.
see you. Yep.
George is starring things that from Hefner saying Hef saying Marilyn, don't read this, so I unstarted it, but I bet it was funny. This is June. Most churches that use a Bible you can go to and get a Bible for free. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
You get a
They
lot of
don't tell
free
you,
literature.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
if you ask a Christian, Muslim, any other religion, like what they believe in, they're happy
Yeah.
to share that with you, right? I mean, Scientology, no, they
If
can't.
you're ever in Toronto and you want a free Quran, there's a group, the Islamic Society, I think, of Toronto or Canada, whatever, and you can go to Yonge and Dundas Square by the Eaton Center, and you can get a free Quran. Like
Yeah.
there it is.
They
It's
want to share,
free.
right? They're
I've
not
got two of them.
right. They're not
You
going to
know?
charge you all this money and going up a
No,
bridge and all. Yeah.
no, exactly.
Mhm.
And if you want, I always like to say too, you should have the option. And they say in Scientology, they give you this lie that there's a free Scientology center in every org. It doesn't exist. I've worked in 2 orgs. It's not true. But okay, you want to pay a few dollars to donate to get a book, fine. You don't want to do that, fine. Like there should be options. That's the whole thing about trying
Yeah.
to be altruistic and nonprofit and whatever. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely. I mean, I won't say it's not a religion. It sort of is in a weird way, depending on
It
how
is
you
kind of
define it.
yeah.
But it's a
Yeah.
corporation. It's a multi-level
One
marketing
thing
corp.
that Steve Hassan says, the cult that spirit is, a lot of people say, well, is it a religion or is it a cult? That's kind of a false dichotomy. It can be a
Right.
cult to be a religion. It doesn't have to be. There are sports-based cults, business-based cults.
Mm-hmm.
There are political cults. There are meditation cults, yoga cults, whatever. But yeah, there
Mm-hmm.
can be religious cults. Like, yeah, unfortunately, whatever institution human beings have created, we've created demonic institutions as well. And I would argue
Mm-hmm.
to say that, yes, in the name of religions, people have done horrible things, but also in the name of countries and politics and,
Yep.
like crimes of passion and stuff like this. So
Yep.
not to downplay anything, but you just give someone an excuse and they'll take it, like that's the issue, I think, more than the thing that they're doing. It's more, what is your excuse? But
Yeah.
and religion, unfortunately, does give people excuses, but as
Oh,
does others.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
History. Yeah. It can basically tell you that. Itchy
Yeah.
Thetan says, I've never understood why the elitism was necessary. I liked hearing the different stories from different experiences people had. Yeah, I like always tend to root for the underdog.
Yeah.
So when I hear of like children, like Jenna's story or other people who just suffered under the hands of people who should have known better, who had
Yeah.
power over them, I don't feel as sorry for the poor little rich movie star. I'm sorry, I
I know.
feel a lot more. I could relate more to having been an orphan that was kind of tossed around, like I say, in my wolf child days, going through a lot of trauma at the hands of more powerful, bigger, older people.
Yeah.
Those are the stories that really stick with me and make me want to fight for
Yeah.
justice.
That was mine as well. But again, when we're talking about gatekeeping, um, if you are a journalist who is, in it for the likes and in it for the fame and in it for what another person can do for you,
Mhm.
that is just, to me, it's unethical and it's unreliable. But they people exist out there. I
Yeah,
mean, it's the nature of the beast.
yeah,
So I don't know. I don't necessarily blame people, but at the same time, there are different demographics. I don't know if somebody did research and realized celebrity stories make more money than regular people's stories, but regular people's stories will probably have more meaning overall. But I don't know. I have no clue.
yeah, and more relatability application to
Yeah.
their own life. Like whenever I talk about a certain concept or whatever, I try to boil it down to something that like a takeaway for pretty much
Yeah.
anybody if they you know if they can relate at all at any level. And that's kind of been one of my focuses is just try to learn and grow myself and kind of teach myself things, and in the process hopefully somebody else can get something out of it as well. And I tackle
That's right.
I tackle tough subjects because I don't know, I just do. I don't want to waste my time talking about Tom Cruise all the time. It's not really my thing. I'm not interested in it.
And that's another thing. How many times in the past, whatever years, do we hear that John Travolta and Tom Cruise are about to leave the Church of Scientology? And you'll
Right.
get a quote from some ex Scientologist who says, "Oh, absolutely. John Travolta sadly
Yeah.
lost his wife a few years ago. Kelly Preston, she died of cancer. He lost his son even before that, very tragically through
Yeah.
an aneurysm or a stroke or something." And
Yeah.
every article was, "He's going to leave. He's going to leave." He's not going to leave. Or if he's going to leave, you'll know because he's going to say it. So not
Mhm.
because of someone who's an ex-member who's speculating. It's the same crap. You see it all the time. Is Tom Cruise leaving Scientology? Is John Travolta leaving Scientology? The answer is no, unless they do. And
Right.
then they will tell us.
And then right, exactly. Just like
Like
with
that's how
Joy
easy it
Vila.
is.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to put this
Exactly.
up because this really,
Jason Begay, Paul Haggis, Leah Remini. Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. George Matthew? Giorgio
Yeah.
says, "My opinion is the core problem with Scientology begins and ends with the concept of the
Yeah.
Thetan, adults in little bodies." Yep.
Yep.
Take that away and there is no Scientology.
Yeah. Well, the core concept in Scientology is actually nothing. If you try to find out what the core belief is, it's just give us your money. But they do have these
Yeah,
arbitrary ideas. And yes, one of them is that you are a Thetan. And so because of that, the secondary part of your assessment, George, is that when you're a child, you're not just a Thetan. So they always do this where things are indirect. They don't tell you the primary belief is like a whitewashing, and then the
yeah,
secondary belief is actually the truth.
yeah,
So they'll say, "Well, you are a Thetan," and then somewhere down the line, they're like, "Yeah, but so are children, so they can be treated like adults." And it's just like, just tell us the truth, you know,
yeah.
like just
Yeah,
do that. Like,
unfortunately, I mean, I'm seeing a little bit of
uh,
a pattern. This is my opinion, but I've seen
yeah,
a pattern of people who tend to be almost drawn to this space. It turns out some of them, well, one in particular, has a criminal record of being
Right.
a
Right.
predator of children, minors.
Mhm.
If you want to call them minors or children, I think minors are children and children, minors, whatever. But
Yeah.
that to me is super creepy and super,
Yeah.
super sus. And that's why I've spoken out about it, because they happen to put me on their radar. If they want to talk about me, do silly videos about me, I'm going to be like, who's this person? Wow. Okay. So I just think that that's something for me has been worth pointing out, because
Yeah.
Scientology is evil. And if there's people that are attacking the survivors and not Scientology itself,
Yeah.
it kind of makes me think, I don't know if it's an op, or I don't know if it's just some really twisted thing that they're attracted to, but it's definitely something that I've just been like, I got my red flags, like, just
Hmm.
up majorly.
I agree.
And so I put this up. Brenda says, Miscavige made an already evil theology even more evil, but the root is rotten. Their source was rotten, created evil theology. So meaning that LRH's whatever policies were pretty much bad to begin with.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Yeah. It started with a tree with rotten roots. Doesn't matter how
Yeah,
if
I
you
mean, didn't he
replant,
say
it's still the
himself?
roots are still rotten.
Yeah. I mean, he
Yeah.
was constantly trying to avoid, the IRS scrutiny and the money
Yeah.
and all that. And like saying that, oh, well, to make more money, you should start a religion. That's
Yeah.
where people like Keith Raniere went wrong. If he had been a
Yeah.
religion, he may not even be in jail right now,
Yep.
which is really, really gross. But Hef
Yeah.
says, because they will have to spend more money on auditing to shake off our cooties. Yes.
Hmm. Space cooties.
Yeah. Jojo says, I agree. To me, there is no smoking gun.
Yeah.
If there was, surely it would have been done.
It's been such a long time, and if they survived Lisa McPherson, which was
Right.
awful, disgusting, if they survived that,
And they had the
you know,
smoking gun. They had Marty Rathbun said that he destroyed documents.
yep,
And the stuff that they got away with, was it Gabe Cazares? I forgot his last name, but the mayor, they were
yep.
trying to frame him, and
One of the
and
things is we all lost when they got tax exempt status. So when that happened, it's they've become almost untouchable. And so
oh, so
really,
frustrating.
you can get your tax exempt status revoked. It has happened to some Christian churches, but you basically have to be a front for some political party or political group. So churches, for
Yeah.
example, in the United States are allowed to have political debates in their church, but they should be equal in some way. So if the church supports like a particular candidate or something
Mhm.
very specific, you can't get your tax exempt status taken away. Scientology knows this, and while most are Republicans in the United States, they really
Mhm.
don't care. Like this is what I like to tell people. I know, Republican Party, whatever, lots of criticisms I give to them. But when I was in Germany, most people were members of the Social Democratic Party because the conservative Christian Party, or the Christian Democratic Union, which was Angela Merkel's party, hated Scientology, and the Social
Really?
Democrats were more lenient. So they don't care about politics; they care who will give them the most benefits. So in Germany,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
in America, it's the right, and whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just know that too.
Yeah. And they are in essence a corporation. So, right.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
considered a person, I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
Listen, there's a lot of private companies and publications that sell spiritual stuff. There's privately owned New Age stores that sell crystals and books on meditation. There's nothing wrong with that, but
Right.
they're on it. Those people are honest.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
they're
Exactly.
making a profit and they're selling stuff. Okay, good for
Right.
them.
Right. So, there's still some questions, but I'm thinking we probably should wind down soon because we're going on 2
Sure,
hours.
sure, sure.
So what is your um what is your prediction for the future like we've been talking about gatekeeping and people's stories and all that, and they have leaked out because a lot of
Yeah.
you have channels, and you're always welcome. And if you have any friends that have been suppressed, not able to tell their story, my platform's always open. It's not huge,
Mhm.
but it's here. And what do you think is like in the future? Do you see it getting better? Do you see things changing at all?
Well, it has changed, which is good. Again, only in the past few years has there been more channels. When I tell the story too, like when I became interested in Scientology when I was in Los Angeles in 2005, there was like hardly anything online about Scientology other than a couple of critical websites and Scientology.org. I don't think YouTube was around yet. I think they were a couple of years away. And even when that happened, like the amount of information that's already existing was substantial, but now it's grown even more. I also know that on
Mhm.
other platforms, like I know TikTok, Tori Christman
Oh yeah.
did a TikTok and has a couple million views. Like, and she,
Oh,
that's incredible.
that's
I know
amazing.
that people are doing things on Instagram and other social medias and whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty satisfied. I think in the future, it's going to be so difficult for Scientology to recruit members. It was not like that in even the early 2000s, mid 2000s when I joined. It was not like that even in the 80s. I mean, you still had some chatter here and there about being a cult, but there's just more and more information. And I
Yeah.
just think that like if the same thing happened, if I just 3 weeks ago, if I was a 22-year-old person and I was walking down Hollywood Boulevard, and I had just graduated from college, and I had some of those negative things that had happened. My parents had just gotten divorced, whatever.
Yeah.
And if I
Yeah.
was walking down Hollywood Boulevard today, it would be, I think I would have a lot more quote unquote ammunition to just walk away from the L. Ron Hubbard Life exhibit than
Right.
I did. And that to me is ultimately the best thing, is that I was just one person who got caught at the wrong place at the wrong time, but
Right.
it's less likely and less likely and less likely every year that goes by. And also, everyone's stories are interesting. Like, yes, okay, the Sea Org stuff is rare and whatever, and the int management, but that does dissuade a lot of people. The gatekeeping is the bad part, but if people, look at a story from someone at management, they're like, "Oh, that David Miscavige is horrible. Why would I want to join that?" That's great. If they look at my story, they look at someone who's only been for a few years or whatever. That's even better. And so I think that there is a better variety now on the
Yeah.
multiple experiences in Scientology from the top to
Mhm.
the bottom. And I just think overall, I think there's going to be more people who will be speaking out, and more people once they leave, they speak out, and people leave every day from the Sea Org, from staff, from public, and they usually go online to talk about it in some way. And so that's going to grow as well, I think.
That's great, Stace. The forewarned is forearmed. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like this comment
So
from Rem. Oh, where is it? I could find it. I lost it. Oh, here it is. Rem Arts. Wait, it's not working. What's happening? Oh, did you do it? Me and George are fighting with the clicker. Says I don't think, at least with respect to Tom DeVot, that he was judging anyone. He was just stating the thing he can contribute to is the take down David part. Everyone's story is needed. Yes, everyone's story is needed. Yeah, it could just been like an accident, unfortunate wording. It was like,
yeah,
basically like, we all got to do that. No, we don't all have to. You can do it. Go for it. I'm
yeah,
behind
go
him,
for it.
So
I'm
yeah.
exhausted half the time, so the energy that I had when I left, that's another thing. Like when you leave, you have all this energy. It's been such
Yeah.
a long time too that it's like, man, I got stuff to do. Like,
Yeah.
that's another thing. Like when somebody leaves, you have this window of opportunity
Hmm.
to do something, and it always passes. And that, I think, that aspect of it, I hope, gets less and less and less as time goes on as well.
Hmm.
So, you know, hopefully that's a positive thing.
Yeah, it is hard because like you feel very passionate about saving people from it, but at the same time, like with me, I was still deconstructing from it. So it was
Yeah,
like I had to kind of go through my own, my own thing, which is still to this day happening. There's still
yeah.
layers, I think, like they talk about the onion layers, but yeah, I get
Mhm.
it. Like when you first, it's almost your eyes are open, you're excited, you want to tell everybody, like, like,
Yeah,
oh my God, I was in a call and you can learn something from this and avoid it. So I think that's
yeah,
mostly like there's like a different things that people are focused on. Some people are focused on protesting and other people are
yeah.
focused on telling, their stories or exposing the abuses and the bad stuff that's going on, the elder abuse and all
Mhm.
that. Some people are focused on, the doctrine, taking that down. Some people are focused on the financial issues. So I think it takes a village, right? It takes everybody. And not everybody can be focused on the same thing at the same time. So,
That's right.
yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
Yeah. Everyone will have a personal interest in whatever that is. They follow it, and
Yeah,
the
and I
end
think it's
result
okay.
is
It's
usually the same.
yeah, no need to, downplay anybody else's experience or focus. So, all right.
Of
Well, this
course.
was this was great. You are welcome back
Thank you, Marilyn.
anytime. Thank you so much, and good luck with your thesis and your all of your academic endeavors. We really appreciate
Thanks.
you. And like I said, I started with it and I'll end with it. You like I feel like anyone who hasn't platformed you, it's their loss because you're one of the smartest guys I know. You're a wealth of information and I love talking to you. So
Well,
thank
thank
you
you
for
so
being here.
much. I appreciate everyone watching.
Yeah,
Thank you
and
for the
head over to
testimony.
Mark Tur it's
Yeah.
at Mark Turry 123. I meant to
Great.
bring up
Yep.
your channel, but it's just at Mark Turry 123. They've been
Yep.
putting, I think the mods have been putting your channel in the comments or in the chat. Definitely head over and subscribe to him. He's got all kinds of videos on different academic, historical things. So very interesting. And yeah, everybody have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Take care.
Xenu, Marlene, everybody partake. Cheers. This is good coffee. This is why, my hubby makes the coffee.